The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
Shake, shake.
Shake, shake.
Shake, shake.
It was just, I loved it. I don't know, man. I love that. I had it in audio, but man, it was adorable.
Dude, I put, there's a Discord community that I'm in, and I just went in because I finished the game this afternoon, and I went in and I said, hey, I finished Mischief Makers today, and just 9 different people all just responded with shake, 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 just it was like when everybody comes together on a Reddit thread to sing the next line of a song through replies. Yep. Just shake, 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 shake all the way down.
Shake, shake.
Kind of completely disrupted the conversation that was going on at the time, but I'm okay with it.
So to go tangent time already. I at work, this was years ago. I walked into the break room and I was wearing a shirt that said "Lawful Good," and the person said D&D. And I said, yes. And I said, which edition? And they said 3.5. And I was like, there we go. And then we sat down and talked about it, right? But that's the thing is that, there were a couple of locked doors of references that, it's a nerd secret handshake, right? Is when somebody says, oh, I play D&D, and somebody says, which edition? And if they go, I don't know, it's then you didn't really play D&D. You might have played it once.
You were in the room while your college roommates were playing.
Right. So, yeah. So if somebody said, oh, I played Mischief Makers, then you're like, shake, shake. Like, what do you... Okay, so then you didn't.
How did you even get past the first level if you don't get that reference?
Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing is it's a great litmus test. But yeah, shake, shake.
Shake, shake. We played Mischief Makers, Nintendo 64, which already, if you know anything about the Nintendo 64, that also gives you a lot of idea about how some of the sections, like graphics, is going to go. Came out October 1997, which is funny to me, right? Because you were an N64 kid, I was a PlayStation kid. And so when I see 1990, the fall of 1997, my brain goes Final Fantasy VII, right? But somewhere right now, there's somebody my age who sees fall of 1997 and goes Mischief Makers. And it's just right? Not because their life experience is better or worse than mine, but obviously my fandom won out. Final Fantasy is a much better known series.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. So here's my summary for this game. You play a robot maid, the Ultra Intergalactic Cybot G, Marina Lightyears. That's her full title, I guess, name and title. And you have to save your creator, Professor Theo, who's been kidnapped by brainwashed... Have you been saying clancers or clankers?
Clancers.
Clancers?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, because they look like little robot people. I want to say clankers.
They're from the planet Clancer.
I know, but I know there's no reason for it to be a hard C, but I guarantee you're right. Okay, I'll try to say clancers. Clancers. And you do this primarily through platforming, traditional 2D platforming. And the aforementioned shaking. This game looks and has the story of what you might call budget anime, right? It kind of looks and has the narrative of a budget anime.
It's Mega Man.
Yeah. We'll talk about that when we get to visuals. I have thoughts about that. But there's a very a lot of assumptions that a person might make about an off-brand 1980s anime. Some of those stereotypes apply here.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you an idea of what this taste is like.
Yes. Agreed. So my nostalgia experience for this is I don't have one. I don't think you do either. Because it's an N64 game. What actually cued me to play this was I was watching a video of old games that surprisingly, they have really interesting mechanics that are surprisingly good. And I was like, oh, because a lot of times when we're sitting down to pick what our next game is, we don't want to just do the top 10 hits of, Mega Man, Super Mario, and Zelda, and then just, burn it all out
Then
in the
retire
first
the
year.
show.
Yeah, and be done, So sometimes we're looking for some of these weird, interesting edge ones, and ones that don't make us immediately want to claw our eyes out, So I was like, oh no, this is actually probably a good list to look at some games that have to do something interesting, which is kind of what we're here for. So yeah, so no, I don't have a nostalgia experience for this one, but I have a new nostalgia experience almost.
My experience of this game was Brian had this game, and
really,
and I didn't play it, or I didn't play it much because I don't have like any real memories of playing it, but I have been exposed to it, and it's famously weird. This is one of those games where like the visuals are fairly striking and specific. The little like shake audio cue is, fairly striking and specific. So even just knowing this game by reputation, I have picked out references to this in other media where I'm like, oh, that's Mischief Makers, because it's just famously weird. Also, everything is covered in screaming faces, which again, we will get to, right? But like, that's the kind of thing that once you know, oh, the screaming demon faces, that's from Mischief Makers, like the shake. Then anytime you see that, you're like, oh, Mischief Makers. So that's my nostalgia experiences. I have now finally played the game that like has been living rent free in a small studio apartment in the back of my mind for a while. And so when you were like, oh, hey, I found this list of games, like here are some interesting options for us, I was like, Mischief Makers. Like because then I can say I played it, right? Like it's already got a spot in my mind from when I was a kid, but now I'll be able to say I played it. So that was my nostalgia experience is only slightly more well informed than yours, not much.
But now it won't be living rent free. It'll start paying rent.
Exactly. And that's all I ask for, right?
Yeah.
There's a limited amount of space up there. You can have some of it. I just need you to contribute.
Time to chill?
It's always time to chill.
So before we get too far in this, we always do like the names thing, right? I just feel the need to remind everyone that the names are whatever I feel like doing in that particular cross section of time, and that it's an extra thing, right? Like it's an extra thing that we do for free, and sometimes it's for the people, and sometimes it's for me.
I feel like this may be level setting that we should all be bracing for.
No, I'm just saying that this one's for me.
Okay.
This is
okay.
Yeah.
So the things we need to first do are tell people if they like what we're doing and they want to support us. Subscribing to the show is an easy one. Leaving a rating and review is an important one. And just honestly, word of mouth, right? Tell people, hey, I like this thing. You should go check out this thing because you too will also like this thing, because that's the number one way to get people listening. If you want to go crazy and actually give us money to help us keep doing what we're doing, actually, I found out playing this game that my nice red N64 controller is broken and needs to be replaced. So if you want to help me buy a new controller, you can subscribe to our Patreon, patronize our Patreon.
Yep, we've had this
Patronate our Patreon.
Petropides.
That's always, all roads lead to Oppides.
Like, Oppides,
yep. All plurals. Everybody who subscribes to the Patreon gets the after show. I'm gonna keep saying subscribes, but it's wrong. It's got to be Petropides.
Yeah.
Everybody,
anyone who Petropides are.
Oh God.
I mean, we TM.
If you give us money, you get the after show. All levels get the after show. And then if you go above and beyond to some of the crazy levels, you can get stuff like free stickers, or the really crazy levels, you can get your name shouted out on the show. So if you want to be one of those people, we will thank you, like our 8-bit classics, John.
Who knows not to suffer the lame horse or the broken man.
Kevin.
Squirming, contorting, and ever expanding. This person must be unmade.
Yarno.
Who, in time, will come to know the tragic extent of my failings.
And Jason.
With their wild eyes, slumped shoulders, and stumbling gait, this one is of no more use to us.
Our 16-bit heroes, Jacob.
Knows that slowly, gently, this is how a life is taken.
And Michael.
Knows prodigious size alone does not dissuade the sharpened blade.
And our full 3D supporter, David.
A man in a robe claiming communion with the divine. Madness.
So, did you back Darkest Dungeon 2 on its Kickstarter? Have you just sent them money with a handwritten note that says, send it to me when it's ready?
No, I just sent them money with a handwritten note that said, have this, please make this. I'll buy it. I will later buy it. Just here's a free donation. I was going to say.
The second one's this year, right? It's in like early access now?
It's in early access presently. It's been such since October. So no, very excited for that to come out. Have deeply fallen back down the rabbit hole of that game, and and I am certainly going to mention some of my adventures in the after show if you all want to hear about that.
I cannot stress enough how different the tone of Mischief Makers is from the tone of that Patreon read. Like, just put a fence around that in your mind. That is a different part of the show. That was just for George.
That was just for George. Yeah, because honestly, for Mischief Makers, there's so many different, there's a bunch of different characters, kind of. But I was like, I don't know.
They also do a lot of portmanteaus that have clan in them, like the Clant's ball and the Clant's pot.
Yeah, and I was like, oh man, I could sit there and do that, but. As I was sitting there listening, literally on my way home, queued up and listened to all of the things the ancestor says and just taking great delight in the way in which he speaks. I was like, you know what? I want to do this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And you know what? You're the one who dreamed up and committed to the bit. So sometimes you got to do one for you.
Yeah, that one was for me. The Sailor Moon one was for me. Just once in a while, it's for me.
I like that one. That was a good one too.
All right.
Let's do the visuals.
Visuals it is.
I don't love N64 graphics, dude. Like, I know, like, it's very in vogue to be like, oh, as a PlayStation kid. The PlayStation also had crappy graphics sometimes. My problem is I don't love the way the N64 handled polygons laid over JPEGs in a lot of games. Sometimes it looks okay, right? Like Final Fantasy VII did this, and it looked okay some of the time, but some of the times it looked like utter crap. So it's not like oh, the PlayStation did it well. This game gets by a lot on the art direction for me, but I don't actually like if you you can't pause and look at the graphics, but if you look at a screenshot, it's things are very janky. There's a lot of rough edges. They do a lot of billboarding to do certain things that because it's a 2.5D game, so you only ever see things from one angle, and so a lot of times they'll just billboard like a particle effect, so it's a drawing of a particle effect, and it's just I don't know, man. Like I don't think the graphics are anything to write home about. The art direction is very interesting, but the graphics themselves are just mostly like, yeah, okay, it looks like an N64 game.
No, I get it. You miss your hoof hands, and I understand that.
Hoof hands for life.
But I would agree with that. Is that and my note is true 3D sprites in a time when that was all the rage. Because they were like, hey, we can do true 3D, so let's do it all the time. And yeah, it was new and interesting at the time. But honestly, would this game be made today? They would have just done 2D sprites. There's no reason why not to. To your point, I agree with you. I think that the art direction really carries this game. And why are they true 3D sprites? You don't need that. It doesn't add anything to the game. So yeah, I don't. Again, that is a choice that they made that absolutely has been borne out to be the wrong choice.
Well, and in their defense, here's a very specific example of they could not have known how poorly this would age. So Professor Theo, that is your creator, the MacGuffin you're trying to rescue for the whole game, and you actually do rescue him like 4 different times, and he keeps getting re-kidnapped. He is a big, like, fat old man stereotype. Like, he's got a big round head. He's wearing a bandana, so his head is almost like perfectly circular. He has a big round body. He's often shown sitting or tied up, so he looks almost like a snowman, right? He's like a big ball with like a smaller ball on top. And the shading on his polygons is like big, flat rows of pixels, which I think the term for that is banding. when it's like there's no form shown by the pixels. Like there's just a line of pixels and then a line of slightly lighter or darker and then slightly lighter or darker. And so you end up with these like very defined stripes. And because he is shaped like a ball, you can really see these stripes like going up and down his body or on his head. Here's the thing though. That decision was made at a time when this game would have been being played on a CRT. So everything would have had a slight blurring to it, right? But we are playing this on modern screens. And so everything looks super crisp, much to the detriment of the art direction choices in this game, right? So like, I don't like this art style particularly well, period, but it aged even worse for reasons that are not their fault and that they could not have foreseen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, is that this is, you know, the era where this became a thing that could be done, and thus everyone did it, which is why I think in part it is, you know, because we've kind of discussed this a little bit, and this is a little tangential, but, you know, where we were saying like, oh, well, you know, we'll probably eventually get to the point where we can do PlayStation 2 games. But then when we said, oh, but what about like PlayStation 3? Eventually, if we keep this up forever, we would get to PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 games. And we were discussing it and kind of saying that will become increasingly disinteresting because we will start to leave the era where some of these paths were forged, and we will no longer be walking the Oregon Trail. We will just be driving to Oregon, you know, and that's not as interesting, right?
Yeah.
So
that'll be a different show, right? Like we could do that. There are lots of great games to review, but not like this.
Right. So, I mean, that's the thing, is that I definitely don't think that, you know, there have been times where we've been critiquing a game where I was like, why? Why did they do this? With this one, I'm like, I understand why they did it. It was retroactively the wrong decision. I will say that the character model for Dr. Theo does 100% say when this game was made, because he looks like a Hell's Angel biker with a lab coat.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, he does.
It's like
he's Master Roshi. Got the long white mustache, long white beard, but in like Hell's Angel cosplay. Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing, is that they were like, oh, well, what if he was a scientist, but you know, cool? And it's like, again, slightly tangential. I blew a kid's mind one time because I was just hiking, and he started hiking with me, and then he said, you know, why do you have that sword? I'm like, oh, I'm going into the woods to do kung fu. And he was like, you know kung fu? And I said, yeah. He's like, man, I wish my teacher knew kung fu. I was like, how do you know they don't? He was like, what? I say that to say that this is like, this is the era where they were experimenting with, like, you know, a scientist doesn't have to be just a scientist. What if they had like other things they could do? And then it's like, what if scientists were just people? Anyways, I mean, say that to say
they're not, and they never can be.
No, they do one thing, and that is science. So speaking of weird little things that this game does, is I just kind of noticed this, and I just wanted to mention it, is when you kill bad guys, you see their ghosts flying up.
Yeah, and in one of the later levels, you have to go around and collect their ghosts in a pot.
Oh, that's even more. So the reason why I mention that is because I'm like, it does show that there was a lot of care put into this game, but again, you know, like, so the polygons were very lovingly crafted. Was that the right idea? I don't know. You know, they did put thought into the fact that the Clansurians are, you know, living creatures that have souls,
with souls.
that leave their bodies when you murder them. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice, because we've talked about on the show how some games, you know, that are more animated and things like that try to shy away from violence. For example, Real Monsters, where they run away, or the Disney game where you magic them into something else. You know?
Yeah, they poof.
Yeah. In this one, it would have been so easy to say you were knocking them unconscious, but they went out of their way to say you are murdering these people, which in a game that has the very animated theming, I thought was a weird choice.
Yeah, the whole, like, I don't want to say too much about this, because I will almost, before I even get to the end of this sentence, be out of my depth, but this game is very Japanese, and there's a lot of stuff going on in this game that I suspect is weirder to us than it would be to a Japanese audience. So, for example, Professor Theo, the bandana he's wearing we associate that with bikers, but that's a very old-fashioned Japanese thing to do, right? Like I'm hard at work, but the fact that he wears like half finger gloves like a mechanic would wear, right? So it's like they're obviously trying to make him look like a man who knows how to like work with machines because he built Marina, but then that bandana I suspect reads very differently, because I thought the same thing as you, right? And it wasn't until you actually said it out loud that I was like, oh no, wait, but like they do that all the time in Japan. But the thing is, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in the seriousness of this world. Like everything is super melodramatic, right? But then when you talk about the Clancers, the people, you remember the big yellow guy from, I think it's Mega Man 1 or 2. He's like a giant blob with arms. He looks like a big muscular man without a head, right? So he's got a humanoid shape, but there's no head on top, right? His eye is like in the middle of his chest. The Clancers are kind of shaped like that, right? Their face is like in the middle of their chest. But I'm going to do something we don't often have to do on the show. Go look up a picture of these things, because no matter how much time we spend describing them, you're not quite gonna get it. They have these sad jack-o'-lantern eyes and mouth that
Scream
is just
mask. The mask from Scream. They look like the mask from Scream.
They look like the mask from Scream, and the eyes are glowing red from deep within, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but here's the thing. Their whole world is like made out of these faces. So there are trees that are made out of blocks that have these not the face, these faces all over them, right? Their houses are made out of blocks that have these faces all over them. They're tombstones that you have to shatter later in the level where you catch them. The bombs, the platform things, the floating balls that you like grab onto that you do a lot of the platforming challenges with, like this face is everywhere. Some of the screenshots I have in front of me right now, there are easily 24 of this face on screen in any of these individual screenshots. It's unreal. And all I can think is, this must have made sense to someone, right? Like, I don't know why they did this. It's certainly very striking. It is impossible to see a screenshot from this game and to not know what game it is, right? Like, if you have ever seen this, you will now forever know. The face from Scream with the eyes glowing red and the mouth in perpetual panic is how these people look all the time. That's not a face that they make. This is how they and their world look all the time.
Imagine if you were to play Minecraft, but every single block had the mask from Scream on it, you know? Like, if they sold that skin or made that mod, that would literally be the Mischief Makers mod. That's all they'd have to do, is just spray paint.
That might be a thing. Minecraft's very popular, dude.
Yeah, right. But anyways, yeah, and to your point, right, is that I don't. So as far as evaluating the decision in and of itself, it was a decision. I don't think that it in any way breaks the game or breaks the experience. It does make the experience singular and very memorable, which is what, if that was what they were trying to do, then great, you know. If I had to guess, is that they were like, hey, you know, we're going to basically use all of these nondescript blocks to represent everything, and somebody's like, that looks boring, and they said, well, I can put this weird face on it, you know, that, and then somebody said, ship it. Yeah, I don't know, but
Greg, we'll put the face on everything. And then just nobody checked on him until it was time to ship the game.
They shipped the game, and the person was like, oh, what'd you end up doing for the textures? You said put the face on everything. I was being sorry. Oh my God, you did that? Yeah. One of the things that the game does that, again, I think shows that I don't know what this game's budget was. My guess is that it was not a huge budget game.
So I can't verify this because that would be research, but on the Wikipedia, because I always put a link to the Wikipedia article for the game in case you're listening to this episode and you've somehow never heard of the game. It says the whole team is 12 people.
Right. Okay. So
and by this point in history, that is not a big team.
No. So that makes sense, right? Because a lot of the decisions that seem to be made by a group of people that really, really cared, but did not have a whole lot of time or money, right? So again, when you say, okay, well, we've got to do something to make this game enjoyable or memorable, just put that face on everything. It's like, all right, that is a unique style. We've got that. Move on. One of the other things that they did is that I think is that everything in the foreground basically is a block with that shape in it. Is some basic geometric shape with that face on it, right? Which, I mean, once you've got that, all they had to do was just build the levels and focus on gameplay, not on art direction. So how do they make everything not seem 100% samey? They just throw a different background on there. That's it, you know? So you progress through these levels that all have seemingly a different feel to them, you know? Like there's the lava level, but what's really different about the lava level? Well, I mean, the background's different, you know? What's really different about the plains or the desert? You know, I mean, like it's just the background's a desert. So it feels like a desert, but everything else is mechanically very much the same. So there seem to be a lot of, in my opinion, clever decisions that were made in order to give the game a lot of uniqueness and difference in feel and difference in kind, which we'll get into in mechanics, while not spending a lot of money on it.
Yeah, it's like they optimized for choices that had like maximum returns, right?
Yeah.
Because some of these choices I would not say are great choices, right? Like the terrifying faces on everything. I don't know if I can defend that as a good choice, right? It's certainly memorable. It certainly gets the job done. The background textures looking like normal is there's like a little bit of dissonance there, right? Because like in the first level, you're in like their city town thing. So all the buildings are made out of terrifying face blocks, but in the background, you can see trees and hills and stuff. And like everything back there looks normal, right? When you're in the cave, it looks like a cave. And when you're on like the bad guy's ship, the Emperor's ship in the last world is like, it just looks like a normal ship, except there's also these face blocks all over it, like, but only the parts you interact with, because very notably, this game is 2.5D, right? So N64, you kind of expect like, oh, it's going to be a 3D game, but it's not. This game could, minus the polygons, but I mean, this game could have absolutely been made for the Super Nintendo. Like it is a side-scrolling platformer. It's not very long, right? So it's even if they tried to shove some Donkey Kong Country style polygons in there, like, it's just not technologically all of that complex, but like it's so hard to some of these decisions are so weird that every time I start to critique them, there's that little part of me that's like trying to be a good critic who's like, but if you just don't get it, like, but I can't look it up. I have to take this game at face value. Nah, man, maybe you just don't get it. Maybe there's a whole Japanese art style that if you were a cool insider, you'd know all about. And I'm like, maybe, but I can't take any of that into account. I'm sorry.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing is because people don't come here to listen to an educated person's opinion. They come here to listen to yours.
Thank you.
But no, I will say that, and I don't think you've ever watched any of the show, Big Mouth, weird show. But
I'm aware of it because it also has an exceptionally uncomfortable art style.
Yes, it does. But one of the things that they say a lot is, is that true? And it's like, hey, you're thinking about it. We're talking about it. So, you know, that's kind of what a lot of this makes me think of. It's like, I don't know if this is good. It's like, hey, you're thinking about it. We're talking about it. You know, so again, and with a team of 12 people, I think that you know what it was is that this was the other option would have just to have made another forgettable platformer, you know? So I think that
they opted for memorable. Totally.
And it's memorable. A couple other just minor points. One thing that they do that I always like it when a game does this, which is that when people are talking, they give you a little portrait of that person, and that's very emotive, which I think is always nice, very helpful, and kind of helps make this weird, spray painted on face of of whatever her name is.
Marina.
Marina. I was trying to remember her whole name, and I was like, "There's no way."
Oh, no. It is. Hang on, I had to write it down. It is the Ultra Intergalactic Cybot G, Marina Lightyears. And the hyphens in there are not where you would expect.
Anyways, so just, because I mean, her face is just spray painted on the sprite, like a Barbie. But so seeing her emote, I always like when they do that. That's pretty helpful.
Well, and I think those portraits are, or at least for me, were where the like supermarket brand Capcom characters kind of got driven home, because there's like the three big bads that you have to deal with over the course of the game, and then the Emperor, and the three big bads are like animals wearing mech suits, so they kind of look like Mavericks from Mega Man X that just didn't get fully converted into robots. Like they're like Mega Man bodies, including like the bulky, cylinder arms and cylinder legs, and then the like animal head sticking out. So they're supposed to be wearing armor, I assume, but they look like Mavericks that are just still, I don't know, taxidermied Mavericks. It's weird. But the style, because every time there's like not really a loading screen, but when it switches from like level to level, like so you finish level and it's taking you back to like the map thing, it does this like tiling effect. It's like a screen wipe, and that tiling effect has all of the different main characters' portraits and several of their different like emotes. And I agree with you, artistically they're actually really good. Actually like the art style and the kind of character design there quite a bit. What I thought was frustrating to these artists is I couldn't stop thinking, this looks like they're aping Mega Man characters. This looks like they're aping Mega Man characters. Because that's mean, right? It's just like and even if this person was inspired by them, it's still, and they obviously were. If you look at Marina's design, like they super obviously were. But I wouldn't be surprised if Capcom also didn't invent that. They just got famous for it, right? Because Japan has been doing big robot anime and big robot movies for decades and decades. So like, is Mega Man the progenitor of that style? Probably not, but it's definitely the most famous.
It's like, clones are 60% of all sci-fi, Beth. You don't get to own clones, like,
yes, exactly.
Like robots are 50% of all anime. You don't just get to own robots, Catcom. But quite possibly. But also too, around this time, I'm trying to think, but around this time in history, if anything, the most recent Mega Man game we would have gotten would have been Mega Man X6 or whatever, X5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are Mega Man X games that were contemporaries of this for sure.
Right. So, I wouldn't surprise me if they said, "Hey, what if Mega Man but good again?" Because this would have been like during its precipitous fall, and I mean, and people have been trying to recapture that Mega Man magic for quite some time. So,
I played. Was it 9? Was the first revival one, and then 10 is the new one.
I haven't played 10, but I played 9. Yeah.
What's the one that has the time control mechanic?
9.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. Well, whichever one that one is, I have not played that one.
Okay.
There's one that looks like the NES games, like even they built in screen flicker to make it feel like a NES game. I have that one. I played a little bit of that one. I did not play as of the time of this recording, the newest one that is like side-scrolling 2D, but it's 3D models and it's all like modern looking.
Yeah. So I now have to pull. I'm trying to look it up as we're talking, and I'm not having the results that I would like to easily on the thing.
We'll do some quick live research here.
Yeah. But anyways, I say that. Yeah, because I'm like, I might have to resist.
Maybe it's 11.
It might be because
10
dude,
it's 11. Wow. So 9 and 10 are in the classic, like, Nintendo looking style. 11 is the one with the gears.
Yeah, 11's the one with the gear system. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, because I was like, man, it's saying Mega Man 10 came out in 2008. I was like, that can't be right. Anyways, so all this is true. One of the other things about this game, though, is they do an interesting kind of moving in and out of with some of the things you have to do. They do a lot of play with what's in the background versus in the foreground. I felt that they did that pretty well in the sense that I was never confused as to what was in the background versus in the foreground, which some games have absolutely done.
Yeah, benefit of screaming faces on everything.
Exactly. But, when the screaming faces were in the foreground, they were way brighter than the other screaming faces. When they're in the background, they were darker. And they were moving clearly back and forth. Or like that lava monster that's in the background and fights at you and throws their punches at you. Like I could tell, oh, he's in the background, but his punches are coming into the foreground and all that kind of good stuff. So thought that was pretty well done. Yeah, outside that, just some other throwaway notes. That's kind of all I got.
Yeah, all I will say to wrap up visuals for this is, again, I don't think this is required for every game that we review. You, listener, go look at pictures of this game. We cannot possibly do the screaming faces justice. Just Google Mischief Makers N64 and switch to images, and you will immediately understand what we are talking about if you have never seen this game before. Or if you have, just as a refresher.
Yeah, just so you know. Just so you know. Audio?
Dude, I really liked the music in this. I was surprised.
Yeah, these are, I literally have my note is like, these are bangers, man. It's good music.
Yes, and honestly, that to me, more than the art style, puts it in the camp with Mega Man X, because Mega Man games have just banging music, dude. Capcom games in general tend to have banging music, like really good audio direction. So the fact that this game that was apparently made by less than a baker's dozen of people has absolutely solid music, I was like, all right, okay, like rock on, team of people who could fit in a large minivan.
Good use of baker's dozen, by the way.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, again, this is something that to me I find fascinating, because with my particular skill set and not really being great with audio in general, is I'm like, when I look at a game like this and they say, oh, well, we did it with 12 people, I'm like, well, I could see how a group that small could get together and come up with the game mechanics and the level design. Like, that makes sense, because those things make sense to me. And yeah, I could see how, you could have somebody who's particularly good at the art, and, they pulled together all the art direction. Yeah. But when you say, oh, there's 12 people, I'm like, dude, I could not pull 12 people together and we could then make any sort of music that sounded like anything, because, and this is just my own personal bias, but I would think, like, when you say, oh, a group of 12 people made this, I'm thinking, oh, I know 12 people. Could I pull together Ocean's 12 and make a video game? And the answer is, we could probably all get together and, like, with your skill set, you could probably, pull together the programming on how to actually get the stuff, into the computer. We could sit there and talk about level design and mechanics and all this sort of stuff. But then when somebody said, you put any music to this, I'd be like, can we rip off something?
Like
what can we rip off?
Music?
Yeah, but yeah, so it that blows my mind. We kind of touched on it, but it's worth mentioning. Just shake, 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 shake,
shake, shake. So I actually have a note in here that some of the voice lines get very repetitive. Not that one. Like,
which is weird, right? Because it happens all the time, but I found it joyful every single time I did it. There were times when I did it and I didn't need to. Like, I just, so it's like, oh,
shake, shake.
This.
Yeah, because you know
shake.
what it is, and this is probably going to sound weird, but like, it sounds kind of like innocent in that genuine way, where it's like, she's not trying to hurt them. She's just, just shake, shake. Like, she's not,
shake, shake.
Right? Because they drop money most of the time, or health, right? So like, you are incentivized to shake every person you come into contact with, and a lot of things you have to shake. So you're shaking all the damn time, and somehow it just, from the first time to the last time, you're just like, oh, Marina.
Shake, shake. And so it would not surprise me that if of the 12 people, one person 100% of their time went into making that not sound annoying, right? Like, that would have been a good use of resources. If
it's like a Stanley Kubrick, like, making the voice actress just do like hundreds of takes until they got it exactly right.
Yeah, because and again, I'd say, somebody say, oh, how many people did we used to make this? 11. I mean, well, 12. We had the shake guy, but
You'll understand.
You'll get it. The one other thing that I'll say about the audio here is, well, two things. One is absolutely there are sound effects that inform you as to what's going on, because a lot of times when you shake something happens off screen and it makes a noise to that effect, which is hypercritical information, because otherwise how would you know? So
there is zero visual information
correct.
Conveyed exclusively through audio.
Yeah, it does like this sound. So so this is a game, and we've discussed this a number of times when we're playing like a Game Boy game or something like that, where we've said, well, maybe it's meant to be played with the sound off, so perhaps one of the reasons why they put so much time and energy into the sound direction on this is because you cannot play this game with the sound off reasonably, because there are so many, to your point, you can shake everything, and there are many things you have to shake, but some of those, so there would be no way to say like, I just shake the thing. That means that a portal probably opened up somewhere off screen. No, that logic would not hold. So yeah, got to have the sound on, got to be listening for the audio cues for when you shake a thing and it made a thing happen.
Oh, and there's bosses, and then there's kind of like mini bosses, which they're sort of delivered in the same like single screen, like the whole level is the boss fight format. But the one of the things that I think distinguishes bosses from mini bosses is, one, the bosses are way harder, but two, the bosses have a part of them that you can grab and shake and only at a specific time. And that does have a visual. It has like a big white reticle with the red arrows, and the red arrows are super critical because sometimes you can only shake in a certain direction, right? And like that matters. But there's a like a missile lock on, like beep beep beep, and I've found that noise to be mission critical in some of the later boss fights, because some of the later boss fights, the difficulty spike is insane. So you're like faffing about, everything is fine, and then you get to these boss fights and like, I had a hard time. Maybe they're not that hard. I had a hard time. But being able to put my eyes on all of the other nonsense that was happening on screen, and then just let my ears listen for the beep beep, and it's like, beep beep, now I can do the shake, right? So like, it's time to grab and shake, right? And or throw, or it's all basically the same mechanic with different cardinal directions. But I was surprised how absolutely necessary it is kind of like a weird bubbly like noise when you shake something and like a portal opens or a thing appears. That noise and the beep beep noise in boss fights are like, you need them, right? You could maybe get by without the boss fight one, but it'd be hard because there's other stuff that is visually holding your attention. But the a thing happened noise, that is, you need it, right? Because the alternative is, I hope you memorize the whole level. Go look for what changed.
Right. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So the one other sound note that I have is there's one other thing that she says a lot, and so it's fascinating to me, right? Because there's a lot of games that we've played where they have very repetitive sound effects, and it can get pretty grating. None of the repetitive sound effects in this one got grating to me. The other one that you do a lot of that is less memorable than shake is yeah, like
the throw.
Yeah, the throw, when you're throwing something, or basically ostensibly throwing yourself. And the reason why I realized that you make that noise a lot, and I was just letting it go, is Megan said, "Are you playing Legend of Zelda?" and I was like, "No, why?" And she's like, "It sounds like Link. He's just sitting there, yeah." And I was like,
I just like that you are conditioned to forgive anything that is reminiscent of the Legend of Zelda.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I didn't even hear it, man, because I mean, I've just heard, my brain has just said, yeah, sometimes when you do stuff, players make that noise. But yeah, no, it didn't even ping on my radar. It's not as memorable as Shake. It's more of a nothing, but clearly didn't get annoying to me. I don't know if it did for you.
That one didn't bother me. I was more aware of it for a reason we will probably talk about when we get to mechanics, but it didn't bother me. I just noticed it more. The two things about the voice lines that did bother me, which they're not deal breakers. I was just kind of like, right? Because the Shake Shake is so adorable and charming. Professor Theo, Prof. Theo, every time you rescue him, he thanks you by trying to, I guess, fondle you. He creeps up behind you like Master Roshi style, right? Like kind of going up behind Chi-Chi or Bulma. And so Marina ain't having that. And so she like grabs him by the arm and like flips him kind of judo style, like over her hip, but she throws him a million billion miles. And every time you do that, and every time he gets kidnapped, which is these two things happen back to back. So you're hearing this voice line back to back is he goes, "Save me, Marina." And it's just like, I have to help you because that's what the game has decided I want to do. But actually, I kind of hate you, old man. Like, you've already given me life. Our debt is paid. Like I didn't ask to be created. You created me. And now you're being like a creepy lecher about it. Maybe I'll just let the Clancers keep you. Right. Like so that line got bothersome because the character was bothering me, not because the line was delivered poorly. Now, the Mavericks, their lines are delivered poorly. Holy crap, dude. And you deal with them so much more in the last world where like you're hearing them talk a lot more. And they're just not good. It's just bad acting, right? I'm not saying I could do better, but I'm not a professional actor. So like it's just not great to hear like Phoenix Gamma in what sounds like this guy had no idea what the context for that line was. He doesn't know what character is saying that. Like they just handed him a spreadsheet with 5 lines on it and were like, record these lines. And that's not the actor's fault, but it does result in a poorly acted performance, right? Because a good actor can deliver a poor performance. Maybe these were all Oscar winners. I don't know, but the delivered performance is not very good. So you go into these like super tense boss fights and they're like, "Brr!" And it's like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And then because some of the boss fights are really hard, there's this cognitive dissonance of like, oh, this is silly. And then you get wrecked. It's like, oh, this is not silly.
Oh, wait, it is in fact not silly. I would be a little surprised if when we looked up the credits for the 12 people that made this game, Bruce Willis and Demi Moore and all of those. Yeah. We're all in there, and I'm just a little proud of myself for picking 90s relevant actors off the top of my head.
Helen Mirren is always relevant.
She is. No, I'm just saying that we both did it, right? Oh, okay. We didn't just kind of say Hannah Montana. It's like Hannah Montana doesn't make any sense. Oh no! Now the commentary doesn't make any sense. We're gonna have to cut all of this.
Oh no!
Controls and mechanics.
Yeah, I mean, there is actually a fair amount to say on just the controls, but I will get this out as quickly as I can so we can get to the more interesting mechanics. But I think it's worth saying that the people who made this didn't know what an N64 was or how it worked. So the N64 has a really stupid controller shaped like a W and it hates you. And you hold it in this weird sideways way, except for this game, because they built this game like a Super Nintendo game. So you actually do all of the controls from the buttons on the right and the D-pad on the left. And that partially impacted my experience at first as I learned that my favorite N64 controller is broken. So at first I was like, God, this game handles so poorly and it's so awkward to be holding the controller in this way. So thankfully that all happened like very early on in the playthrough. But if you want to support our Patreon so I can afford to buy a new red N64 controller, there's links in the show notes for that. But it's just weird because I was an N64 kid, like to pick up the N64 controller and then hold it like a Super Nintendo controller and completely ignore the stick in the middle is just weird. Just weird. It's not bad. It's just that controller is so specific. So to essentially ignore the whole part of it that made it that controller is just weird. It's a weird choice. It's weird as faces on stuff.
Well, and I think that that the kind of the idea, I believe, behind the Nintendo controller is it was like, what if we made a controller where you could do one or the other, right? And that's kind of true of a lot of the N64 stuff, is that they didn't really know what humans could do yet, So the idea of, oh my God, human beings controlling the camera and moving in 3 dimensions at the same time, madness. So that obviously we learned that human beings can do that relatively easily. Side note, if you want to know whether or not that's a learned skill, hand a game that requires that type of control to your parents and watch the hilarity, because it does it. For us, we just pick it up and start moving around in 3D space. I handed it off to my parents, and my mind was blown with how poorly that went.
Nothing natural about it. You got to learn it, but
yep.
still.
But still, one of the things I thought that was a weird choice is the boost being mapped to the C buttons. Because the thing is that you therefore can't, in my opinion, very easily or seamlessly jump and then boost, because those both require the same finger,
Yeah.
At least not as effortlessly. And again, I am too old to do the Mega Man X weird grip thing anymore. Like, it's just not
the claw grip.
The claw grip where you reach your index finger around and no, ain't nothing doing. Especially when the trigger buttons are unused, So what confuses me about that is that if you why not make boost R trigger or Z? Well, I mean, you can't use Z trigger because of where your hand is. But if you made it R trigger or L trigger, right, for the shoulder buttons, that would make sense, because then all you would do is just whichever direction you're pushing in, you then boost in that direction on the D-pad, right? Because those things would work independently, and you're likely to be pushing in the direction that you're trying to go in. So if you're running forward and you want to boost forward, then you'd be pushing forward. You hit the R button and you boost forward, as opposed to, if you're trying to jump and then boost forward, or jump and then boost up, you've got to switch those buttons really fast. I felt that was not the correct choice. And I didn't see any way to remap the controller in the game.
No, that's a relatively modern thing. Or in the old days, sometimes you could do that in specific genres, like in fighters. Mm-hmm. But that actually, the fact that you can do that in like Mega Man and Super Metroid, that was fairly uncommon. Sometimes you would have the like options like layout A, layout B, but just I'll tell you what this button is going to do. That's pretty new.
Yeah, and it's also like an accessibility thing. But I will say that this game did not have that, and I felt that the decisions that they made were clearly born from a very small group of people who played the game a lot and cared a lot about it, to the point where they internalized how to do all this sort of stuff. And then when I picked it up, I said, why would you do it this way?
So, and I think the fact that you can double tap a direction to boost or use the C buttons shows they were trying to think about it, right? Because it's like, oh, well, sometimes you're going to want to jump and you're going to want to boost. But where that falls down for me is in some of the actual like lived reality. So here's an example. Platforms in this game have corners that you aren't allowed to know about. So even though the geometry is very simple, there are platforms that I was like, oh, I just clipped right on top of this, even though it does not look like I should have made it up there. And so I was trying to like boost awkwardly onto these platforms, but they just let you clip onto the platform and it's fine. And you don't have to do these like tricky claw grip, double boosts at an angle and all this weirdness. But then when you do need to boost, there's this one level, I don't remember if you got this far or not, but there's this one level where you have to return the king's favorite tricycle to him. And it's like it's like an auto scroller level, so there's like a wave of water coming from the left side of the screen, and so you have to ride the tricycle right, but there's of course crap in the way, right? And so that's what you're dealing with. But she doesn't pedal the tricycle, she boosts. So you have to either use the C buttons and you can't jump, so it's fine to use the C buttons, because if you jump off the tricycle. So you have to use the C buttons, or you have to double press the arrows. But here's the weird thing. If you double press the arrows and press the C buttons, the game will actually accept those inputs faster. So in all of the levels, because there's only like 2 or 3, in all of the levels where boosting is like a really important thing, you can just mash the arrow and the corresponding C arrow pretty fast and go like ludicrously fast. And I don't know if they did that on purpose. I don't know if that was an intended way to be successful, because that level is very easy for you to go too slow. So is this intentional? I don't, is it a controller accommodation thing? I honestly don't know.
Interesting. So one of the things that I want you to talk about is the lack of gating mechanics, because it seems like you might have gotten burned by that.
Yeah. So on a recent episode, you talked about like lighten me up when you're just like, dude, this is dumb, I hate it. And then I'll usually like calm you down and just be like, oh no, it's this button over here. Or, it's in the manual that I said you should maybe take a peek at, right? Like
I will never ever read a manual ever.
That's fair.
Like,
I'm going to keep suggesting them to you, but
yeah, and that's also fair. No, like, so but I feel it's a great litmus test, right? Because if you read the manual and I don't, and then I struggle with something and you don't, then
we know.
That's a great example. Okay, so then it probably means that the manual had to be read, and we just have different philosophies on that, because you're saying, oh well, it was an expectation at the time that you would read the manual, and I'm like, yeah, but we're evaluating them by today's standards where you don't read manuals, and so different philosophies. But yeah, I'm it's now become like one of those weird things that has metastasized, and now it's a part of who I am. It's still like, I don't read manuals.
Kronk illiterate. But I do usually get to be on the enlightened, informed side of this interaction. Not this time, dude. Like,
nope.
So, the core mechanic of this game is the shake, but to do the shake, you have to grab stuff. And this is the whole reason you were interested in this game, because you were like, oh, you basically just grab like everything. And when I say everything, I mean, and I'll try to remember to link this screenshot in the show notes, but there's like the ball things you can grab onto that gives you a hint, miss hint. One of the hints she gives you is, she's like, remember the core mechanics of the game are like jumping, grabbing, and throwing. Try grabbing everything, even enemy fire, like their lasers and crap. So like, when I say you can grab onto just about anything, like that's what we're talking about. So I somehow got most of the way through the first world, and each world has like 10 levels. So I got most of the way through the first world only jumping off of platforms that I was holding on to, not throwing myself off of platforms. But then you do eventually get to a point where it is impossible, literally impossible to proceed without, it's in the second world. So you can get all the way through the first world, 10 whole levels in a boss fight, without knowing that you have to throw yourself to jump essentially off of one of these midair platforms. And so once I finally sussed this out, I texted you and I was just like, hey, make sure you understand that you can do this, because otherwise, like, there's this one level that's literally impossible. And you were like, I know.
Yeah, you're like, I was like, yeah, wait, you. So it was so intuitive to me that I looked at a video to be like, am I still missing something? You're like, oh, you have to throw things you have to throw yourself off of stuff. It makes you go way further. I was like, yeah, wait, what? And then I was, is there a super throw that I'm missing? And no, it's just normal throw.
Yeah.
So,
but this was critical for me, because from that moment on, I saw the world in terms of things I could grab and things I could throw. I was like, I'm not even looking for things to walk and jump on anymore. This is no longer a platformer. This is a grab thrower. This is like the whole world now exists for me to grab it and either throw it or throw myself off of it, which is, a good way to think about interacting with this world.
Yes. So I will say that so arguably you can make the argument that there is a gating mechanic and you hit it. It's just 2.5 levels, 2.5 stages in, but that's That's like saying oh, well, how do you explain all this weird stuff? And the answer is, oh, well, it's all in the kids' imaginations. And it's like, yeah, I mean,
and
great.
Miss Hint does, granted, she is optional, but Miss Hint does flat out say, this is how you have to interact with the world. But that's not a gating mechanic. That's an instruction manual.
Right. I will say that the way I think that they offset that problem, again, not a gating mechanic, so it's not a hard stop, right? Is their use of breadcrumbing. So a lot of the places where, because they put all those little diamonds around, if you're going to really get most of those, you've got to learn the throw mechanic pretty early, Again,
also the dash jump, which is almost never game critical, but is like bonus collecting critical. Kind of weird.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, basically, they put all these breadcrumbs around in the form of the diamonds and say, "Hey, go get these," and then in order to get those, you have to master certain skills. But to your point, right, is that you can just skip all that, So I do think that
these are all different ways of saying what I think is the largest problem with this game, which is the level design. I feel like the level design is maybe only second to the weird difficulty spikes, but the level design is where the game started to fall apart for me entirely, because I was like, oh, this mechanic is super interesting, and these graphics are kind of weird and dated and I don't care for them, but like, what an interesting way to interact with the world. But then the fact that I was able to go through the entire first level and the first world and like a stage or two of the second world without a core game mechanic, I was just like, no, like what? And this problem continues throughout the back half of the game, because there's only 5 worlds. It's not terribly long. Is you'll get thrown into a situation where they have done nothing to prepare you. It's like, oh, here's moving platforms, and if you fall into lava. And it's like, that's how you're introducing me to moving platforms? Like, there's been 0 moving platforms, and the first time I'm exposed to them, there's enemies dropping down from the top and lava underneath. Like, those stakes are too high.
Yes. So they definitely do kind of throw you into the deep end. But one of the things that they do, I think, to offset that, again, it's interesting because I am not arguing that they do these things. But like, for me, a lot of these edges were rounded off because of some of the other things they did. It's fascinating. This is a little tangential, but I had a conversation with somebody at one point where we were talking about Star Wars episode, one of the new ones, I forget which one. I think it was episode 8. But where I said, oh, I liked it. And they said, oh, I didn't. And we went through and we actually 100% agreed on every single thing that the episode did. It's just the things that it did poorly. Every time she's like, well, it did this thing poorly. I was like, yeah, I agree, but I don't really care about that. I think it did this thing well. And then she said, oh, I agree, but I don't really care about that. Right. So it's kind of that. So one of the things that this game did right, I feel, for the amount that I played it, was that there are no lives. Everything is life. Right. So if you fall into a pit, it just takes a little bit of life and it kicks you back a little bit, So it's not like that all of a sudden you get thrown into the deep end, like in Prince of Persia, let's just say the original, right?
For example,
where all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I'm going to check out this new thing. Oh, no, wait, I'm dead, and kicked back to the beginning of the game, because I've got 1 life, right? So there were definitely times where I was suddenly overwhelmed by a thing, but then I was like, oh, okay, that's what you wanted me to do. And then I was kicked back 10 seconds, and lost a little bit of life. And the amount of life that you get, at least towards the beginning, because I didn't make it to the end, but towards the beginning, is plentiful, so realistically there is some punishment for making a mistake, but this actually, to me, had a feel of a more modern game where the challenge was just the challenge. Once it wasn't punishing in the sense of where it's like, oh, if you mess this up 3 times, now we're going to kick you back to however far, right? It was more so like, yeah, the thing that's stopping your forward progress is your ability to get past the thing, not your ability to manage your health or your lives as well,
So this is, I agree with you. And this is where I think you can see the relative inexperience or the tight schedule or whatever it was that forced them to make the decisions that they made, or that led them to choosing to make the decisions they made, is because 85% of the game I would say what you just said is absolutely correct. And it's like, oh, okay, so, I fell in lava, but I don't get thrown back to the title screen. I just have to, bamf back over here and then deal with this again. Up to and including two critical things. One, all the levels are very short. And two, there are actually little secret checkpoints in most of the levels, even though they're very short. So in the fall into the lava level, in the giant wave of water chasing you level, yeah, I died like a bajillion times, but then you just start back and the cycle time is wicked fast, right? Like one of the nice things about being a cartridge game is it's not a spinning disc. So you fall into lava and bam, back on the platform, like super, super fast.
Yeah, surprisingly, I liked that. They did the thing I like.
I know, right? They then couple that with, if you do run all the way out of life, because you can have up to, I think, 3 full bars. It's like a full bar plus 2 gems full of health. But if you completely run out of life, and there's life drops all over the place. But if you die, you go to the continue screen, and you can either spend, I think, 10 or 30 gems to continue, then like 60 gems to continue with 1 extra health bar, and then like 100 gems to continue with the fullest amount of health you can have, which is nice in like the boss levels where it's like, oh god, please don't make me go back and replay earlier levels to like fill up my health again. So you still can go bankrupt essentially, but you have this extra like buffer. My problem, like where that doesn't hold up, is some of the later boss fights. If you just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can get stun locked and lose like a bar and a half of health. Just get absolutely eradicated. And there's nothing else in the game that prepares you for that. So like you're playing the whole game, you're never trying to avoid being stun locked. I don't think players should ever. Bosses, yes. Players should not be able to be stun locked. It's not fun. I can't imagine circumstances under which being stun locked would be like, oh, what a fun and interesting challenge this is. So to suddenly be in a boss fight that's multiple phases long, and like the third phase stun locks you and you die, and then you have to start the boss fight over, like, it's like, how did you give me all these checkpoints and all this life and these little baby challenges, and then just throw me into the lava of this boss fight and expect me to be prepared? Not that I couldn't eventually overcome the challenge, but I'm overcoming it. You, the game, did not do anything to prepare me to overcome this challenge.
Yeah. You did it.
I did. I beat the game. I did eventually beat the game.
Yeah. And so I think that this definitely comes from the era of, it's a really fascinating era of video games, right? Because they're starting to experiment with, all of this new ideas, new things. Like the consoles have been around for long enough that they're starting to break from some of the really crystallized dogma of coin ops, right? So I think that this kind of like they had the idea. What if the challenge and the fun thing was just getting past the thing, right? What if it was just that, and you could just have a game where you could just go through, do the thing, and beat it. And somebody said, well, if everyone beats our game, then no one's going to want to play it. So let's make 90% of the game that, but then let's still make it really hard to beat the game, And we played a couple of games like that where the main note has been, it was fine up until the very last boss fight, and then all of a sudden it becomes a complete devolving nightmare. One of the things that this game did, this is actually another control note that I forgot to mention before. So there's a number of times when you have to carry something, and when you pick something up, you just press the button once and you pick it up. You don't have to hold the button down to continue to hold it. And I said, oh my God, they did the thing I've wanted, like make
the good behavior is the default behavior.
Right. Yeah. And I was like, so when I noticed that, I had to call it out because I've been whining about this for literally years, so I was like, oh my God, they did the thing I wanted. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do think also too that, so we mentioned the fact that grabbing things, is obviously the core mechanic. They're real generous with how close you have to be when you grab a thing, which I appreciated.
Yeah, they're actually so generous that did you get to the festival, the sports festival?
No, I got to the beginning of World 3.
Okay, so you were actually right before it. So there's a sports festival because it's an anime, so there has to be a sports festival.
Sure.
One of the things in the sports festival is a math competition where they put like simple arithmetic problems on screen, and there's a bunch of numbers, and you have to jump and grab the numbers, the digits that will make the answer to the math problem. And they are somewhat tightly packed. And so you actually, that's like the one time in the game you have to be careful when you press the grab button, otherwise you'll grab the wrong number. So I was like, oh, they're really, really generous about this grab mechanic all the time, which I love. And they absolutely made the right decision. And then in this one place, they were like, but here we're going to pack a bunch of stuff in tight. Thankfully, the stakes could not be lower, but
right.
It's still just like, guys, you're so close to nailing it.
Why'd you shoot yourself in the foot?
This
was avoidable.
I wanted to write 100 at the top of your paper, but I got to write like 98.
Yeah. But no, I did think that, there was never a time when I missed a grab and I was like, I should have gotten that. There were quite a few times when I got a grab where I was like, okay. But, that's the emotion you want, right? Where you're like, well, that shouldn't have happened, but whatever. I'm happy because I got what I wanted, as opposed to, no, this game's cheating. And so basically that's kind of, outside of a couple of other throwaway notes, the main theming of a lot of my stuff here is that with the sheer amount of health that you have, and then when you make a mistake, how little it pushes you back. It did kind of have a very, and I know I bring this up all the time, but very Celeste-like feel in the sense of, making mistakes was not very highly punished. Bummer that they decided to undo that and at the very end, but
the thing about the bosses, because the last world has 3 back-to-back bosses, and the third to last boss is actually far and away the one I had the most trouble with. The one thing I will say is, I'll admit, I actually had to look up what to do because there's so much crap. There's so much crap. Shut up. There's so much crap flying around on screen that I was just like, I'm not in the headspace to experiment with this. Like I knew I have a very small set of tools, which I love. I love that you have a very small set of tools and those tools solve all problems, right? It's like,
it's very, very Mario, right?
Yes.
Where it's like, I throw my hat at the thing.
Yes. Trying to explain to my daughter how to play Super Mario Odyssey, I was like, you can jump, you can throw the hat. If you encounter a problem and you have not tried one of those 2 solutions, you have not tried everything, because those 2 tools solve basically every problem. The grab and the throw and the shake solve basically all of your problems in this game. With some of the final bosses, you are under enough duress because you can be stun locked and die, that experimenting just becomes boorish, right? So it's not that the tools don't work, it's just it stops being like as engaging. And once I knew what to do, I was like, oh, okay, I just need to try and grab this thing at this time, no big deal. And then I was able to go through it. But two things I want to make sure I don't forget to mention, just because I think they're critical to understanding the flavor that this game is going for. Is one thing is, when you create a save file, it asks you for your age and your gender. I don't know why. But it also has like time played, but that is total time played, because each stage they rank how quickly you finish the stage. But I noticed when you pause this game, the timer doesn't stop.
That is correct.
Because what you're seeing is the total time played, which significantly is measured in days and then hours, minutes, and seconds. So when you load a save file, it's like lions, male, 36, X number of days, X number of hours, X number of minutes, X number of seconds. And I was just like, that's weird. Like, but it's such a deliberate choice, right? Someone said, we are trying to build a game where they will play for what will amount to multiple days of playtime, and we are going to represent that in their save file. So it's just like, it's not good or bad, but it's a super deliberate choice, right? Just like putting faces on everything, super deliberate choice. the other thing is, do you know how the gold gems work? Because this is fascinating.
No, I mean, I thought. Wait, the gold gem doesn't just give you like a ton of life, or am I thinking something else?
So it does give you a ton of life.
Okay.
So there's red gems, which are money. There's
Mhm.
blue gems, which are health. There's green gems, which are more health. But then there's gold gems. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. The gold gems, there's, I think, one in every level. And
Mhm.
there's different, some of them are just laying around and you can just find them. Some of them, it's like, oh, you actually have to beat the whole boss without taking a single hit. And that's how you earn the gold gem for that stage. When you beat the game, the closing cinematic starts. And in the top left corner, there is a timer that is populated by gold gems. And that timer just starts ticking down. And when it reaches 0, the closing cinematic ends, even if somebody's in the middle of a damn sentence. So the amount of the ending, it's not like there's the bad ending and the good ending, or the bad ending, the good ending, and the secret ending. There's one ending, but literally the amount of it you get to see is directly tied to your mastery of the game, which is exploration and controls mastery because of what you have to do with the bosses. And I was like, I don't even know how to feel about this. Like, to say that seeing the entire ending essentially requires not just 100%ing the game through gritting your teeth and putting up with it, but sheer and unarguable mastery, right? You have to beat all of the bosses without taking a single hit. I was like, that's brutal. That's super brutal. That's like if the only way you could see the closing cinematic for Celeste was if you got all of the strawberries in all of the B, C, and D sides. Like,
right,
dude, too much. Like,
it's
for this ridiculous shake, colorful anime looking game to say like, oh, you want to see the ending? Earn it.
Yeah.
Like, just, whoa.
Yeah. And you know, it's fascinating because it, again, like, this game shows a lot of experimentation, right? You know, because it's a thing. It's not necessarily a bad idea in and of itself, you know, especially if, you know, and I don't know if this is the case because I did not get to the ending. And also too, it is worth noting that this game came out in a time before YouTube, because now it would just be like, just go online, like, who cares, right? You know, it wouldn't work anymore. But it would be interesting if the way they tiered it instead was like, let's say that there's the, you know, bad ending, good ending, and secret ending. If they just use that exact same thing, but, you know, it's like, okay, well, here's the normal ending, and everybody holds hands and sings a happy song. But then somebody runs in from off screen with new information, you know, like, so kind of like the scene feels like it's going to end, but if you can watch it longer, you can see that there's more cool stuff to it. But yeah, it is just weird that it just kind of cuts off, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, literally the counter is sitting in the top of the screen. So you as the player now inextricably associate these two things, right? Like, if you didn't understand why they were valuable before, now you know. But then to just
that's weird.
Watch it fade to black because this is also the one part of the game where you can't advance the dialogue at your own pace, because
of course,
because then you could see
that
more.
would screw everything up.
Right, exactly. So to literally have it fade to black in the middle of two characters talking to each other, and it's just like, I guess I'm done. Game over.
That's it.
And the thing is, dude, I did finish the game, but if there's actually a gold gem in every single level, including the boss fights, that would mean there's like 52 gold gems, and I had 7.
48. It looks like. Wait, yeah, no, there's 52.
Yeah,
sorry,
so,
I got the thing up. Yeah,
and I had 7, so I saw like a tiny little sliver of the ending.
Yeah. Wow, that's wild.
It's super wild, right? It's like, because when I finished the game, I was like, "Aha, I did it!" And then it, you know, fades to black in the middle of these two people talking to each other, and I was like, "What?
Wait,
what?
Wait,
what the hell just happened?"
Which, I mean, again, you know, great for replay value, you know, but then unlike in Celeste, right, where it's just kind of like, okay, well, you know, one is then don't have that weird difficulty spike at the end if you're going for that type of replay, because it's like playing the game from start to finish can be the easiest thing in the world, because if what you're going for is mastery, then they will go back and replay those levels, you know. Yeah, it's just again, fish with legs kind of a thing. But you ready to ask the question?
So I meant to say this at the top of the show, and I just completely forgot. Usually in my notes, because I have a template notes document, I block all my notes out into the different sections, and then I flag what my ranking is, and I usually put like a bullet point or two about like why I settled on that ranking. And we've had episodes where I'm like, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence, or like something you say changes my mind, or we have some interesting revelation that changes my mind. Going into this, I was very aware of the fact that I was like, I don't know how I feel about this game. And I really hope by the end of the episode, one of us has said something to give me like a firm position to stand behind. And now that we're here, I still don't know how I feel about this game. And that's weird. This is a weird game that I have a weird like experience of and feelings about. Like, I'm glad we played it, but there were a couple times where like I cursed so loud that like my wife was afraid I woke up our kids, and I probably did. Right. And then there were other times where it was just like, oh, this is fun and interesting. And like, oh man, this is, I'm tempted to find like an emulated version of this so I could use like all the crazy like texture upscalers that make everything look smooth and nice. Right. And like kind of modernize it a little bit. Like, one thing I know for sure is I didn't care for the level design in this, and I didn't care for the difficulty spikes in this. I want someone to take this fairly interesting and surprisingly well executed mechanic and like make a better game. Like, I just remake this game, right? Don't pretend this is a new original thing. Like, just remake this game with more thoughtful level design, a smoother difficulty curve, or better gating mechanics, right? Like, I'm fascinated enough by this that I want more of it, but I'm also kind of like, okay, I'm done. We played it. So I'm going to settle on a nostalgia monocle of like, I guess, like, I enjoyed parts of it. There's a lot you could learn from this game. It's definitely a weird art piece, but I couldn't confidently say you only enjoyed this game if you have fond memories. And I also can't confidently say this game is a dumpster fire, no one should play it, because it tries so many interesting things in the art direction and in the core game mechanics that I'm just nostalgia monocle, I guess, right? It's like my doctor saying like, what's better, A or B, like testing my vision. And I'm like, well, I can't see well enough to go without goggles, but I definitely don't need goggles. Can I just take the monocle for like when the print is really small? I'm like, yeah, just take this monocle. So I'm like, okay, I guess I have a nostalgia monocle now.
And that's fair. That's fair. I can definitely see that. For me, I'd say no nostalgia goggles required.
Damn, this almost never goes in this direction.
Because normally I'm more of like the salty thing. But here's why, though. I think it's because I found that I don't know whether I can say like more or less than you, but I personally really enjoy novelty, and this game is that, right? It does a lot of dumb stuff, but it was genuinely enjoyable to play. There are definitely some of the games that we've played where Megan will say, "Are you going to play that game?" I'm like, "Yeah, I will eventually. Leave me alone about it." Like because I don't want to, right? As I'm like, I have to go play this game, because we're going to make an episode about it, right? But for this one, every time I picked it up, I'm like, this is just genuinely enjoyable. It was, it wasn't perfect, but as far as normally when we talk about this, is I'd say like, who would I recommend this game to? And I'd say, like, well, I'd recommend it with this caveat, or with this, maybe for this edge group of people or something like that. Honestly, if somebody said, hey, I'm looking for a weird platform, I'd be like, hey, you want a weird platformer? Try Mischief Makers. It's fun. It's weird. Is it the best thing in the world? No. But if somebody said, would you recommend this? I would bob my head up and down and say, shake, shake.
The curtain falls. The music plays. The credits roll. Then it all fades to black. And you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day.